Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina.
We're going to bring in our panel for analysis on this. We're joined by Kyle Jacobs, Associate Principal at Navigator, and Roland Martin, host and managing editor of the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show. Thanks to both of you for joining us right now. We're waiting for Sean Spicer, the former president's press secretary, for a very short period of time, but a former press secretary nonetheless, to join us in this conversation. So we'll get him hooked up as soon as he's here. But Roland, let me get your thoughts. Nikki Haley says she's going to fight another day.
Of course, because the next one is South Carolina. It only makes sense, but the reality is when she loses in South Carolina, then she'll drop out of the race. The money's not going to be there, and there'll be nothing more embarrassing to be the former governor of South Carolina and to lose. You already have the sitting senators of that state that have endorsed Donald Trump. You've had Congresswoman Nancy Mace endorse Donald Trump. And so South Carolina is going to be her last stand, and is likely to be the last time she's on the national stage as a candidate, because when she loses that state, she'll have no choice but to drop out. So strategy-wise, let me just stick with you for a second here, Roland. Why stay in there? Why not throw in the towel now? Is it just to save face, or I mean, I'm trying to think of the political reasoning here. Well, it's very simple. When you, first of all, you've only had 2 states vote. If you actually add the numbers up, and we'll wait for these numbers to come in. Let's say it gets to 70,000, the 50+ thousand in Iowa. That means 120,000 people will have decided the primary for the Republican Party. But it's also going to come down to money. At the end of the day, if you don't have the resources to pay your campaign staff, to do television ads, to do radio ads, if the donors do not see a pathway to victory, then you have no campaign. And if you can't win your home state, she's pushing all chips to the middle. She has to win South Carolina. She can't come close. She has to win her home state. She loses her home state, race is over.
Okay, Kyle, let me bring you in here. Your thoughts on Nikki Haley staying in. And also, it seemed like she was taking the gloves off even more than she has already, ramping up her attacks on Donald Trump, specifically around his age and cognitive ability. What did you make?
I think Roland is exactly right there. Nikki Haley, she's all in on this next primary. She's facing some very steep competition from Donald Trump. I must say, though, as a Canadian observer, I am continuously impressed with the enthusiasm that you see both in the audiences and in the candidates themselves when they deliver these speeches. It's something we here up north are a bit enviable of.
And so, you know, Kyle, I'll ask you about the mental competency, the age factor here, and if that is going to catch on with Republican voters, because clearly at this point it hasn't. It's not going to stick, and Roland, as you see, is shaking his head.
It clearly didn't catch on the last election. It clearly hasn't had traction this time around. I don't see why it would make a difference in the next primary.
So then, Roland, why keep making that argument, right? Like, why would Nikki Haley go at that?
Right.
It does seem a little bit below the belt, some would say.
Well, first of all, that's what politics is. But you also, you have to cast doubt.
Yeah.
And Trump has sounded crazy in a lot of these speeches. He absolutely has. And so you want to constantly be casting doubt. And look, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, look, Trump could take a fall. He could get sick. Yeah, but you literally have no idea what's going to happen. And so if you're Nikki Haley, you want to stay in as long as you can. So if anything happens to make the case, hey, I'm the one still left standing. But the bottom line is he has a very strong base that they are going to turn out. The Republican Party, they are aligned with Donald Trump. And so I fully expect him to be the nominee. But bottom line is he's going to have some fundamental issues come the fall. That's why you hear Nikki Haley talk about, look, focus on November as well,
Yeah.
not just who wins the primary, because we got to win November.
Okay, I want to bring in Sean Spicer. Thank you for joining us, Sean. We've been waiting for you to get hooked up here. Sean Spicer, the former White House press secretary. Let me just get your reaction to these results. Nikki Haley saying that she's going to fight it out, and what we're expecting to hear from the former president, where Katie is right now at that watch party in New Hampshire.
Well, I think, first of all, Roland's right in terms of how this thing is going to play out. The question is, how long does she want to go on? What I thought was interesting is how quick she came out tonight. Normally, you want to wait till you get your results. I think what she's doing, she realizes that what's coming in early are the cities like the Manchesters, Concord, Nashua, the big areas where you're going to get that are suburbs of Boston that were going to be more favorable to Haley, and then get out there, tell your supporters, hey, look, we're close, and so I'm going to fight to South Carolina. She didn't want to wait, because my guess is that more results come in from the more rural areas of New Hampshire, from up north and out west. That's not going to benefit her. So she wanted to get out there while the result was as tight as possible and make the case that she should fight on. But at the end of the day, Roland's right. I mean, the donors are going to wake up tomorrow, the supporters, the people who knock on doors, and they're going to say, wait a second, if Donald Trump expands his lead beyond double-digit points tonight, which I think is extremely possible and likely, it's going to be hard for her to make the case to go on. But she's also mistaken. Look, Nevada is actually a state that is coming up. There are several delegates at stake there, and there's a caucus in one of our territories. South Carolina is 31 days away. That's a lot of time, and that means you need to pay for staff and infrastructure and ads to go on. She's really hoping that she can do well there. Roland brought up the endorsements earlier. It's not just the endorsements. Donald Trump is killing her by 30 points there, and I expect that lead to grow. I don't know that she wants to lose in a state she was governor twice for.
Is Donald Trump, and I'll ask you, Sean, we had Laura Trump on, the former president's daughter-in-law yesterday, and she was saying that, he may already have he likely has his pick for who he wants as his running mate. Is he even paying attention to this race in the primaries, or is he looking ahead already?
It's an interesting question. Having gone through this with him last cycle, I was the chief strategist for the RNC and spent a lot of time up there. He is not one that usually gets too far over his skis. And so I think he teased that the other day where he said, I've already picked the person. I think he might, maybe it is. Maybe he does have that person in mind. But at the end of the day, there's no way that he's not focused on what's going on right now and how soon he can wrap this up. I've known him enough that he's focused on getting this thing wrapped up. And if she doesn't drop out today or tomorrow or the next day, then it's going to be a knockout punch in South Carolina. Because just real quickly, and take Roland's analysis and keep going. Let's just say that she played on from South Carolina. Yeah. March 5th, Super Tuesday, you got 10 states, 874 delegates at stake. Trump's the only one who has an infrastructure built out that can handle that many states at once. So the question is, when and where does she want to have her last stand?
I want to talk to Kyle quickly here before we go to Roland, just about the Canadian perspective here. We know the Liberal retreat was going on, that this was a topic, another potential Trump presidency. What do you think that would mean for this country? And even if he is, running against Biden, talk to me about how that could impact Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe for the benefit of Sean and Roland, we have a Liberal Prime Minister here in Canada who continually attempts to paint Pierre Poilievre, our leader of the Conservative Party, as a Trump North. And, this is really a desperate attempt to distract from the reality on the ground here in Canada. When the American election happens, it doesn't matter if the president at the end of the day is Joe Biden, Nikki Haley, or Donald Trump. Canadians here are suffering. We have an extreme housing crisis. Middle-class Canadians are being pushed out of house and home. They're having to pick between heating their home or putting food on the tables. We have homeless encampments sprawling up across the country. So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who is in the White House. We need to focus on the issues that are pertinent here at home.
And obviously, Liberals in this country and the NDP would have a different view of that. That's a conservative perspective. But Roland, let me get you to kind of zoom out here as well and look ahead at what could be a matchup between Donald Trump and Joe Biden once again. And how the court cases play in here, or do they? Because clearly they haven't played into the primaries at all.
Well, first of all, you got to understand, primaries are really for your hardcore voters. Okay, when you look at the vote totals, anyone knows you're not going to see massive turnout in primaries compared to the general. So that's just first of all. But here's the concern that Donald Trump has to have, even when it comes to these court cases. He can't lose moderates. He can't lose even those folks who are Republicans who maybe turned up on January 6th. And so he has to figure out a way, how do I reach those people? Now, you got two candidates, both of them are old, okay? I mean, the reality is Biden's old, Trump is old. And so it also comes down to what are you articulating and what is the vision forward? For Biden, look, you're seeing the economic indicators actually turn. And so those things are helpful. But really what this thing is going to boil down to, frankly, are 7 states: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. Those are going to be the critical 7 states. The other 43 are pretty much, we know exactly how those things are going to go. And so the question then now becomes, if you're Trump, how do you get over that 45, 47%? And then if you're Biden, how do you deal with so many young voters who've been turned off by his actions with regards to Israel and their fight with the Palestinians in Gaza? And so those are the two big things. I would say if there wasn't an attack in Israel, then it looks totally different when it comes to Biden and approval numbers. But he really has to now do some work to keep the coalition together that elected him in 2020. And the reality is, the greatest person who can turn out Biden's coalition is Trump.
Okay, and so, Sean, let me ask you that. Do you think the White House right now is hoping that it's Trump for a rematch?
I do.
Hell yeah!
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah. They're praying for it. But I would say Roland's mostly right. I actually think there's an 8th state, but it really doesn't matter. I think New Hampshire's 4 electoral votes are in play. But look, there's 2 issues at play here. Number one, the one thing, yes, both candidates are older, but I don't think that the Republicans have the same issues physically and mentally with Trump that they do with Biden. And you see that in poll after poll. 23% of Americans in the latest ABC News poll thought that Biden had the mental sharpness to be president. Right or wrong, that's just a reality. And the thing is that unless he becomes Benjamin Button, he's not getting younger. And that's something that they have to deal with every single day. And it's the physical and the mental images that they have to see. He was given a speech today. He fumbled multiple times, as he does almost every time. Then the other issue is that domestically, you've got the southern border, you've got our energy independence and the cost of, you mentioned home heating oil in Canada. Those folks in Wisconsin, Michigan, New Hampshire are all dealing with those same issues. The economic issues, higher interest rates. Then you deal with the foreign incursions that are happening. And one of the points that Roland made was can't be underscored. It's not just what's going on in Hamas and Israel. It's look at a state like Michigan. In 2016, Donald Trump won Michigan by 0.22% of a vote, 10,703 votes, right? So you take an issue where you've got a high population that affects, i.e. Michigan, in the Detroit suburbs, and you say if that's going to hurt him with young people and people who are really voting on that issue, he's going to lose Michigan again, that being Biden. So there's a lot of these intangibles. And frankly, I think it helps keep Georgia in play a lot more. There's a lot of these issues. New Hampshire, the number 2 issue tonight for voters, immigration. That's an area where fentanyl is really affecting a state like New Hampshire in New England. So there's a lot of issues that are driving people right now. And when you contrast Trump and Biden, and that's frankly what they're going to do, is say, I might not like Donald Trump's style, but here's where inflation was. Here's where costs for heating oil and gas and food and rent were under Trump. And here's where they are under Biden. Here's where the southern border is right now. I mean, there's a lot of issues that are going to transcend how much you like somebody or not when it comes to how we vote.
I'm going to go to Kyle here.
Well, also what's going to happen, but
go ahead, Roland.
I think what's going to happen is if you're Biden Harris, you're going to remind people that COVID took place, a worldwide pandemic, and so there really were 2 Trump terms, before COVID and after COVID, and you're going to say, who did a horrible job in managing it. So all of these things are going to come to bear. And like it or not, Trump still has to deal with January 6th, how that is being viewed as well. So people say, oh, that's not really a big deal. Listen, when you talk about margins, they matter. Ask all those Republicans who lost in Arizona in 2022 on those critical issues. And so that's what you have to understand what this is going to come down to. And remember, a year out in 1991, President George H.W. Bush was riding high with a 91% approval rating. A year later, he was packing. Things change in a matter of months in presidential elections in the United States.
All right, Kyle, I got 30 seconds left for a last word. I got to go to Katie Simpson here, who's got some news for us. But Kyle, last word to you. Absolutely.
You know, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau here in Canada, he continues to sling mud at the Republican candidate, Donald Trump. And, you know, that is concerning. As Sean and Roland have pointed out, Donald Trump is likely to be the Republican candidate for the presidential election. And we cannot continue to sling mud and attack, you know, a likely president of the most important trading partner and our most important ally in this country. Justin Trudeau is attempting to score cheap political points, and it's just not something that we need to be doing in this country.
Okay, a conservative Canadian perspective. Yeah, ask you, Sean, though, quickly, why is George Santos there? And does Donald Trump actually even care if he's getting George Santos as an endorsement?
No, and no. And I think that the answer to the beginning part of your question, I think he probably has nothing else to do. But yeah, that's a little odd. One quick point, Joe, just to, everyone you mentioned waiting for Trump. Again, I'm keeping an eye on these votes. Right now, Trump is up about just near that 10-point mark. As I said to you earlier, I think Nikki Haley went out when I think she thought it would be as close as possible to make the race look like that there was a reason to go on. I will bet that Trump waits the opposite. He wants to make sure that he's as far away from her as possible in terms of percentage points. He's in no hurry. He's going to wait till that's a little bit lower so he can walk out and say something like, hey, I'm leading by over 10 points. She should drop out. But he has no rush to get out right now. And I think he wants to see a lot more of those towns and municipalities that are further out get their vote in, where I think he probably knows that he's going to do better.
Well, take us a little bit behind the scenes, Sean, if you would, and tell us kind of the conversations that are going on right now. Who is around him right now behind the scenes before he goes out and makes the speech?
So he's going to have that core team: Jason Miller, Stephen Chung, Chris LaCivita, Susie Wiles, the people who have been the nucleus of the campaign team. They're with him. If you saw the images of him in Iowa, those were the folks on the stage with him. I think Don Jr.'s up there, as well as Eric. You mentioned Laura. I believe that she's up there as well. But then you're going to have the core of that New Hampshire team. And what they're doing, I assume that they've had a pretty solid job. His state director is the former chairman of the state party up there, is that they're looking at the data as far as where their projections were. Did they get their people out to vote in each of these precincts? And you can pretty much tell based on where he ran last time, is he running about where he was last time? Is he running ahead? But there are certain towns and municipalities where they knew that they had a strong lead. They had identified their voters. They had called through them. They knew that, this person and that person and that person were with them, and that they can check them off the rolls. They went there. And so they're telling Donald Trump right now, okay, based on the projections, we need Londonderry to come in. We need Salem to come in. And we expect, based on the number of people who voted in our track, that those people will come in strong for you. And we expect that we're going to do, X percentage there. So a good team in a state like New Hampshire knows what's out and where they expect to do well. And they're watching that come in and telling the candidate at the time, okay, the big cities, the Manchesters, the Concord, the Nashua, they're coming in early. They're bigger. They're going to probably be more sympathetic to a Haley voter. They're going to have more independent voters. You're going to look at a town like Bedford, where I think that they know that Haley had a better chance of getting unaffiliated voters. But they're going to tell them, here's where we think we're going to do a lot better and where our track shows you doing better. So let's wait till that comes in.
Roland, is there a path at all for Nikki Haley?
Say it again.
Is there a path at all for Nikki Haley here? Or is it just 2 seconds?
Hell no.
Hell no.
No. There's no path. Again, barring anything health-wise, there isn't a path. I mean, you look, the numbers are the numbers. I go back to 2020. People forget early primaries, Joe Biden doesn't do well. He wins South Carolina, he starts cleaning clocks because they saw what happened after South Carolina. You had more diverse states. Well, with Donald Trump, nobody in the party has been willing to put up a credible challenge. His core base, they are there. That's who turns out. Again, if you're Trump, your concern right now is, am I going to be able to get those folks come the general? And so I've long said he is going to be the Republican nominee. Biden's going to be the Democratic nominee. The person tonight who should be slapping themselves, I think, is Congressman Dean Phillips and billionaire Bill Ackman for giving him $1 million to a super PAC. I mean, dude, you spent all the time in New Hampshire. Biden was a write-in, and he got 73% of the vote. What does that tell you? This is going to be another race, 2020 all over again, Biden, Trump.
As we go into what could be Biden-Trump, looks like Biden-Trump, Kyle, you know, I was talking on our Spotlight segment yesterday. We featured former Supreme Court Justice here in Canada, Rosalia Bella. And, you know, part of that conversation was on divisions, not only in this country, but also in the United States. She's really worried about what is going to happen to our neighbors to the south. If it is a Biden-Trump matchup, if there are these divisions that, as she said, and paraphrasing here, don't want to put words in her mouth, but, you know, we're catching the fumes of what's happening in America. Is that a concern for you if we do have a Biden-Trump rematch here?
You know, I think in terms of having a Biden-Trump rematch, I think both potential presidents have a slew of challenges for Canada. You know, we saw under a Trump presidency a renegotiation of the NAFTA agreement, but we also saw with a presidency, President Joe Biden, on his first day practically, he ripped up the Trans-Canada Pipeline Agreement. Both potential presidents have their challenges, and what we really need is a prime minister who is going to represent the best interests of Canadians. Just this past October, there was an Angus Reid poll that came out, and by a wide margin, Canadians feel that Pierre Poilievre would be the best representative to, you know, bring Canada's perspective to the United States, to defend our values and our interests in potential negotiations or exchanges with the Americans. So I think that is something top of mind that Canadians are thinking about as we also go into our own federal election.
Well, the Canadian gets the last word again here, but we appreciate the Americans coming on with us as well.
Shocker!
To break this down.
Shocker!
Shocker, there you go. Listen, appreciate you all being with us here for the breaking news tonight. That wraps up our Intersection segment. Kyle Jacobs, Associate Principal with Navigator. Roland Martin, host and managing editor of the Roland Martin Unfiltered, a daily digital show. And Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary under President Trump and host of the Sean Spicer Show, joined us here.